Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. We don't do a lot of weather segments on the show, but we couldn't help but notice this phenomenon called a polar vortex that's descended on the Midwestern United States this week. Temperatures dropped to lows that didn't even seem real. Parts of the state of Illinois fell to 38 degrees below zero this morning. That's a new state record. In Thief River Falls, Minnesota, the temperature approached 80 below. Ugh. Cold like that will turn hot coffee to ice crystals before it hits the ground. Stay outside for any length of time and you will die. And a number of people did in that region. They were found froze to death in the last few days. Meteorologists, and this is the good news, say it will warm up soon. Climate change will continue as it always has. Spring will come. But this is a good reminder of something. Energy matters. It keeps us alive. What would happen if you didn't have energy? Well, that's something we may need to consider very soon because of something called the Green New Deal. What is that? It's not clear. Take a look now at a description by the chief proponent of the Green New Deal. Watch.
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years?
That is the goal. It's ambitious. And
how is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car?
It's going to require a lot of rapid change that we don't even conceive as possible right now.
So no fossil fuels within 12 years. There's a lot we don't know about this plan, but that would definitely be the headline. They've spelled it out very clearly. Now, before we can assess whether getting to that point, no fossil fuels in 12 years, is even possible, it is, as the Congresswoman just said, an ambitious goal. Let's consider what it would mean for the United States. No fossil fuels would mean no coal, no oil, no natural gas. And that would mean no cars and no airplanes. It would mean shutting down the single most vibrant part of the entire U.S. economy, which is the energy sector. It would mean putting at least 6 million Americans out of work immediately. As of today, America is the largest oil producer in the world. The country exports more natural gas than any other place. More than 90% of all of our energy comes from fossil fuels and nuclear power. And we'd have to figure out a way to replace that in 12 years, using primarily solar and wind power. Ambitious? Well, that's one way to describe it. More destructive than a major war on U.S. soil would be another way to describe it. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand calls the prospect of all of this, quote, a really exciting thing. Kamala Harris agrees. Bernie Sanders isn't simply a fan. He says eliminating fossil fuels immediately is a moral imperative.
That it is absolutely imperative and a life and death issue that we have got to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to sustainable energy.
What's so interesting about that is that the party of science somehow forgot to consult actual scientists about their plan. Talk to someone who studies energy and see for yourself. We are nowhere near being able to do any of this. Wind power is a scam. It's an elaborate ripoff perpetuated on impoverished rural America by a few heavily subsidized corporations that are getting rich from making the landscape uglier. Solar is a promising technology, actually, but we're still far from being able to efficiently store the energy it produces, and storage is key in a power grid. Solar is not a replacement for fossil fuels now or anytime soon, and anyone who tells you otherwise hasn't bothered to learn anything about it. That would describe most of the people pushing the Green New Deal. How well is wind power going to heat your house when it's 30 below? What is the range exactly on those new solar passenger jets? Well, they don't know and they don't care because none of it applies to them. It never does. But we think the science is really interesting, and so we want to go through it really quickly with Daniel Turner. He's the executive director and founder of Power the Future, and he joins us now. Mr. Turner, thanks very much for coming on. So you're hearing an increasing number of people, and I want to be open-minded about this, but say that we're going to get rid of all fossil fuels in the United States and switch to something called renewables in a dozen years. Could we do that?
Not at all. The technology doesn't exist right now, and I'm optimistic. We may get there one day, but right now, here's a case in point. The largest solar farm in the nation does not produce enough kilowatts to power the New York City subway system. And that farm is 4,000 acres, which is 5 times the size of Central Park. So when Representative Ocasio-Cortez says we're going to power the entire country on renewables, there just isn't the land to come up with the solar farm or the wind necessary to have these renewables. So the science just does not equate to the reality of how we run our economy.
So what are they saying exactly? We're going to do this, but there's no science to back up that promise, so why are they saying it?
Yeah, this is, I think, all part of the 2020 presidential campaign. Everyone who has run has come out in favor of a Green New Deal, with one exception, who's Michael Bloomberg. And he is a complete environmentalist. He has given tens of almost close to $200 million just to the Sierra Club alone to fight coal. And he has said this is pie in the sky. So he realizes that the Green New Deal is not a real policy proposal whatsoever.
Huh. The American energy sector is the great success story of our entire economy. It's almost never covered, but it's really the growth sector for the last dozen years, and we're now the biggest, of course, exporter of natural gas in the world. What would it mean to kill that in 10 years?
Yeah, look at how it powers every single thing we do, from agriculture to manufacturing to transportation. Every part of our economy is dependent upon cheap, reliable, abundant, and domestic energy. That makes us, it frees us from the shackles of international conflict. It gives us an awful lot of autonomy, but it lowers the cost of all of the goods from everything we eat. There's an environmentalist right now watching this show who's eating an avocado in New York. Does that person not realize that the avocado is only possible because of cheap, abundant, reliable
But I'm
energy?
just confused, because maybe I'm getting old, but it seems like just yesterday that both parties were saying, Democrats for sure were, and I agreed with them, we need to become energy independent so that we're not tied, as you said, to these lunatic countries in the Middle East that hate us.
Yeah.
Well, we did that. Nobody seemed to notice, but it's the great success story economically of the past dozen years, and now we're going to kill it?
Exactly. And this all happened despite what the previous administration did to the coal industry, right? Natural gas and fracking has been a phenomenon for our country and for our economy. But the previous administration decimated coal in rural America because they didn't like coal for some reason. So why do we want these politicians who are so far removed from understanding how the energy sector works tinker with policy when they are so far out of their league?
I think those are completely fair questions, non-polemical and fair questions. Mr. Turner, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Luis Miranda is a former DNC communications director. He's thought about this question. He joins us tonight. Mr. Miranda, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Tucker.
What are you going to do about airplanes?
Well, it's not like anybody is going to do away with airplanes. I think what the whole point of the Green New Deal is to push us further. And we have good allies in the petroleum industry itself. British Petroleum now touts itself as beyond petroleum. And plenty of the best and most significant investments in renewable energies are coming from the fossil fuel industry that has recognized that it needs to transition.
I know how terrified. I mean, look, big business is an ally of the left. I mean, obviously I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that.
Is that what it is now?
And I'm aware of the sort of Orwellian statements that their PR departments put out. But the fact is that you have people running for president at the very top of the Democratic Party promising us and the country that we're going to be off all fossil fuels in a dozen years. So a lot of questions that stem from that. But the first one in my mind, since it's a country dependent, it's a continental country, what are you going to do about airplanes, honestly?
Well, look, there's a variety of proposals that are going to emerge from this. What you're talking about is one proposal from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and apparently Senator Markey, but there's going to be other perspectives on this. Nancy Pelosi has appointed a commission to look at this and to identify ways that we can move forward more aggressively on making a transition responsibly. And so nobody's talking about shutting down the airline industry. What we're talking about is the fact that this polar vortex and more severe weather like it are going to continue to happen if we don't take aggressive steps to reduce carbon emissions.
Right. I mean, without even getting into the global warming question, which is a separate one, it's just so striking that the United States has achieved this amazing victory over dependence on Middle Eastern oil. No one really acknowledges it. It's a thing that we've been calling for.
Well, natural gas is one of the things that has crushed coal. I mean, you know, your prior guest says that Obama killed coal. It was natural gas.
Well, Obama was very hostile to coal, but natural gas, that's for sure. Cheap natural gas.
And despite Donald Trump's promises, coal mines are closing.
Okay, but look, the question, you're actually writing the script for me, is once natural gas has done this amazing thing, it's a cleaner form of energy, now every Democrat running for president has promised to kill natural gas.
Well, it's one vehicle, but we need to have, as a country, we need a lot of different sources of energy.
Well, we have a different sources.
We need a lot of sources of energy.
We have many sources of energy. But why would you want to kill the single most successful, homegrown, cheapest, cleanest form of energy that actually works that we have?
What you want to do is give the American people more options. And if you do it smartly, you can actually do it in a way that creates more jobs. I'll give you a perfect example where you combine smart policies that have bipartisan support, we have now opportunity zones that are going to allow people to defer their capital gains investments, potentially eliminate what they owe on that entirely over 10 years, to put it into revitalizing communities that have been left behind over the last many years. And you can actually combine that with other programs that help install renewable energy systems inside those buildings.
No, I know it's going to be.
You put people to work retrofitting buildings. There's a lot of ways that we can do this in a responsible way.
I'm not against infrastructure.
Nobody's talking about stopping airplanes.
Well, actually, the member of Congress whose tape I displayed is talking about stopping all fossil fuels, and that would stop airplanes in their tracks. There's no solar.
The idea is to transition to new forms of energy, not to suspend.
But I'm just saying, why would I listen to policymakers who know nothing about the policy? None of these people know anything about energy at all, and they're making promises that are insane, that they can't keep, and that the science rejects out of hand. So why are they credible?
I'm not asking you to listen to them. What I'm asking you to do is to consider that we need people like that to help bring the debate up, and then we can have a lot of different sectors.
Let's have this debate.
Find consensus.
So wind power is not an efficient form of power. It hasn't been. I think solar is promising. Wind is not. And yet it is the scourge of rural America. It's every poor community has a windmill, and these offshore companies are getting rich from it. Why are there no wind farms in Nantucket Sound or off the coast of Greenwich or off the coast of Malibu?
Why is it only continuing to expand wind power and making it more efficient? And like you said, I think solar has tremendous promise.
But shouldn't wind power shouldn't we evenly share the burden? Why are there no wind farms in rich neighborhoods? Why is it in the Central Valley of California?
We're going to have to share the burden. But one of the examples of how solar has been so effective is that a lot of power companies used to give a lot of incentives to people to install solar panels. And if you exceeded what you used in energy because of what you were collecting and kicking back into the grid, you actually got a credit. Well, a lot of power companies in states like Arizona and others are trying to cut back on those credits because there's so much electricity from the solar panels in people's homes coming back into the grid.
But they
don't want to give them credits.
They can't store it. That's the problem. That's why nobody talking about this knows they don't know what they're talking about. It's not the question is not generating electricity, it's storing it so you can release it when you need it at peak usage times. It's going to have
to be a combination of technologies.
Hopefully we can get some smart.
We have to have this debate, and whether or not you agree with Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, with Congresswoman Cortez,
do you have any idea
the important thing is that we have people who are pushing the debate so we can have these questions and answer them in a way that works.
I'm interested in it.
I want the science to continue to evolve on it. Is it going to be ready in 12 years? Maybe not, but at least we're moving in that direction.
Stop lying for once. That would be great. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Tucker.